Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. Webster Tarpley in Washington, D.C. Do take a look at tarpley.net for some of these commentaries that I'm mentioning. Well, we were just in the middle of the Israeli question here, and I certainly wouldn't want to choose sides between Obama and Netanyahu, and indeed this is the point. Rather than choosing sides between Obama and Netanyahu, let us understand what is going on here. And it is a symptom of the weakness of the U.S. under the Obama regime, but also of the inherent structural weaknesses of imperialist strategy per se. And again, the goal is to create a U.S.-backed, a U.S.-controlled bloc of kamikaze puppet states in the Middle East that are Arab and Sunni in nature, and to play that against the Iranians, who are, of course, Persians and Shiites, and within this, Israel. Now, Israel would not be a part of the Arab-Sunni bloc, but concessions from Israel to various countries are key in allowing the U.S. to assemble that strategic bloc, which would then be played against the Iranians. And this includes concessions in terms of the two-state solution, the peace process, the status of the West Bank and Gaza, and then also the Golan, concessions to Syria, the one way where you might be able to peel off Syria from Iran. At least that's the thinking at the State Department. So the whole business with Netanyahu revolves around this. It is a battle between two very sinister forces, and that's this flap, right, the non-invitation to dinner and the various acrimony that went on between Obama and Netanyahu in the White House. It's a bad scene, but it also shows that the ability of Obama to dictate, even in this part of the world, is less than it was. The immediate issue, the settlements, Netanyahu and his coalition partners want to build them, and the U.S. says, well, if you build these settlements, then how are we ever going to get our Arab-Sunni bloc going so we can confront Iran and perhaps even play them against one another? There are forces in Saudi Arabia that seem to be quite aggressive in their desire to go after the Iranians. Now let's go a little bit further. India. Here we have a country which has taken the very unwise step of engaging in this U.S.-Indian nuclear accord, right, put together in the last months of the Bush regime in the second half of 2008. There's still some haggling going on about the dimensions of U.S.-India nuclear cooperation. Let me just point out, the U.S.-India nuclear accord makes the entire nuclear non-proliferation regime, whatever you think of that, and I don't think a lot of it, but if you're concerned about nuclear non-proliferation, the U.S.-India nuclear accord makes that into a dead duck. You can't use that against Iran if you're violating it with India yourself. So remember then that right after the U.S.-India nuclear deal went through, you had the big Mumbai, Bombay terror attacks of Thanksgiving 2008, and in the middle of this, we now have the case of this guy Headley. And Headley, admitted official agent of the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration, therefore an agent of the U.S. intelligence community, is revealed more and more to be a U.S. agent, and he was the key guy in planning and setting up the Mumbai massacre. And this is beginning to sink in India. And I would say to people in India, look at the Red Brigades in Italy, look at the Baader-Meinhof gang in Germany back in the 70s and into the 80s, and you will see what happens when you become an asset of NATO and the U.S.-British worldwide combination. You will find terrorism being used in your country to manipulate public opinion, to maintain the alliance that you've gone into, and to demonize and crush the very considerable forces in India who don't want this deal, because it is indeed a bad deal for India. It seems to promise nothing but a future for India as cannon fodder for the U.S. and the British in some future conflict with Pakistan and or China. And the Chinese angle may be a little bit more acrimonious than is generally understood. All right, now let's take this all into Europe. Here we have, again, Sarkozy, the most pro-U.S. president of France, our time, right, who ran on applying American methods and has tried to market himself as Obama's bosom buddy. Well, we had the French regional elections a couple of weeks ago now. Sarkozy took a monumental beating. The French Socialist Party, that cadaver, has been brought back from the dead, and that takes some doing. The whole opposition in France is now reinvigorated, and they are looking forward to challenging Sarkozy when his term ends, and of course he may be facing all kinds of candidates. We won't get into that now. But Sarkozy, therefore, very weak. When Sarkozy came to Washington a couple of days ago, he was licking his wounds, of course, and he was trying to find some demagogic way that he and Obama could somehow, cut a more, viable figure than had been done so far. And Sarkozy, obviously, Obama was going to ask him, Sarkozy, we want French troops big time into Afghanistan for our imperialist operation there. And Sarkozy had to say, sorry, Barack, I am too weak now. There's too much national opposition in France. It's not yet a total puppet state of the U.S., and people don't want to send their forces to die over there. And he has. And, of course, today the news is more German troops killed in this useless, endless, hopeless war in Afghanistan. So what they did do then was to get up and do the posturing about sanctions vis-a-vis Iran. Sarkozy has been more out in front, really, than anybody. Sarkozy, the most aggressive, the most bellicose, the most warmongering on Iran. All the awful traditions of the French Fourth Republic, the colonial war stuff, the Algerian war, the Indochina war, the Suez kind of mentality, 1956, all of this represented by Sarkozy. So this is a terrible case. Now, contrast him with Silvio Berlusconi, the irrepressible Silvio Berlusconi. There have also been regional elections in Italy, and Berlusconi has won them. He has not just held up under the onslaught of Anglo-American destabilization, but he actually expanded his base of support. Now, remember, this got very ugly last December when this very heavy paperweight was thrown into his face, which was a real violent attack, around the same time that the Pope was tackled on Christmas Eve by this crazy woman who had been brought in by Anglo-American intelligence to create that incident. What's going on here? Well, the U.S. and the British are attempting to organize a violet revolution, purple, violet. The violet revolution in Italy is supposed to bring down Berlusconi, and it's now been stalled by these elections. We'll be back in a minute with more on that.